Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you're walking through Boston's North End. It's January 15th, 1919. Um, it's cold, right? That biting kind of winter cold.
Yeah, windy too, probably. You hear like seagulls, maybe footsteps on the cobblestones.
Exactly. And the air. It smells like, well, bread baking, definitely the salty harbor smell. But then
Oh.
there's this weirdly sweet scent mixed in. Unexpected.
Yeah, then uh-oh, the ground kind of starts to hum, then this deep groan, like metal tearing apart.
Followed by this massive boom, an explosion.
And suddenly you look up and there's this, well, it's a wall. A 25-foot wall of thick, dark molasses barreling towards you. Insane speed, like 35 miles an hour.
It sounds completely absurd, doesn't it? Like cartoonish.
Totally. But here's the thing. It actually happened. It might sound funny now, but it was real. A river of molasses literally tore through Boston.
And the reality was anything but funny. It was devastating.
Oh, absolutely horrific. 21 people were killed, over 150 injured. Buildings just flattened.
And get this, the ripples from this sticky disaster, they went way beyond Boston. It actually led to some pretty major changes in American law, in regulations.
Which is fascinating, right? How something so localized could have such a broad impact.
Exactly. So that's what we're diving into today, this Great Molasses Flood. We're going to unpack the story, the negligence, the human cost, this disaster you might never have even heard of.
Yeah, and uncover some, key insights and maybe some surprising facts along the way.
So where does this story even begin? Well, right at the center is this giant molasses tank.
The villain of the piece, if you like, owned by the Purity Distilling Company.
And you really need to grasp why molasses was such a big deal back then. It wasn't just for baking.
Right. Yeah, rum, sure. But the big thing was industrial alcohol for munitions. World War I was just ending, or had just ended, and the demand had been massive.
Companies like Purity needed to store huge amounts of this stuff, which led them to build this absolutely enormous tank.
Right in the North End, 1915. We're talking 50 feet tall, 90 feet wide. It held, what, 2.3 million gallons?
Just imagine that dominating the neighborhood. And, problems started pretty much immediately.
Yeah, it leaked from day one.
Not just a little drip either.
Apparently, it was so bad locals actually joked about it. Kids would, go collect the goo.
Which is darkly funny now, but seriously. Why wasn't the company freaking out?
Well, their solution, get this, was to paint the tank brown.
To hide the leaks. Seriously.
Seems like it. Just cover it up. Instead of, fixing the fundamental problem, it's baffling.
And it wasn't just leaks. People heard noises, right? Groans, pops coming from the tank.
Yeah, and a city worker actually warned them, said it could burst. But Purity apparently ignored it all.
They were rushing, weren't they? Trying to churn out alcohol before Prohibition kicked in.
That's the story. Profit over safety, it seems like. A classic, tragic setup.
So fast forward to the day itself, January 15th, 1919, and the weather was weird. Really weird for Boston in January. It got warm, fast.
Yeah.
Like from freezing up to over 40 degrees Fahrenheit in just hours.
And that temperature swing, probably crucial. It likely caused the molasses inside to ferment, expand.
Right, increasing the pressure inside this already dodgy tank.
And then around lunchtime, 12.30, 12.4 maybe, boom.
Witnesses felt the ground shake. Heard this incredible roar, like a train crashing, a thunderclap.
And rivets popping off like machine gun fire. That sound must have been terrifying.
Investigations later figured the failure probably started near a manhole cover at the bottom. Maybe a fatigue crack.
Yeah, a weak spot. The pressure just found it, and a catastrophic failure.
And the wave it unleashed. Just horrifying. 25 feet high, maybe even taller.
Moving at 35 miles an hour. And it spread out like 100 yards wide in places, covered 2 whole blocks.
And remember, molasses is dense, way denser than water, about 40% more. So the force...
Unbelievable. It didn't just flood, it crushed. Buildings swept off foundations, a whole firehouse knocked sideways.
That Clarity house just gone, wiped away.
It even snapped steel girders on the elevated railway, tipped a streetcar, threw a truck into the harbor. The energy involved is hard to comprehend.
The descriptions from the time are chilling. The Boston Post wrote about molasses being waist deep, full of wreckage.
And you couldn't tell if shapes struggling in it were people or animals. Horrible.
That line about horses dying like flies on sticky paper.
Yeah.
Just brutal.
And it wasn't just being caught in it. People reported being thrown by the air pressure wave that came first, hit by flying debris.
Yeah, the force just picked things up. Wood, metal, terrifying chaos.
And those individual stories.
Yeah.
Gut-wrenching. That little boy, Antonio D'Estasio, swept up but somehow surviving.
But his sister's watching. Unimaginable terror.
And Martin Clafferty, waking up as his house collapses around him, surviving on his bed frame, floating but losing his mom and brother.
And those poor kids just out gathering firewood. Maria D'Estasio, Pasquale Antosca. Just gone. It's heartbreaking.
The aftermath, too. The rescue efforts were a nightmare.
Because the molasses started to thicken in the cold, right? Like quicksand.
Exactly. It made it incredibly hard for rescuers, including those Navy cadets from the USS Nantucket, to even move, let alone pull people out.
And the smell, that sweet metallic stench, must have been overpowering.
They searched for 4 days, found victims so coated they were unrecognizable. Just awful.
Cleaning it up took forever. Weeks for the immediate area, months for the rest of Boston.
They used saltwater hoses from fireboats, tons of sand to absorb it. The harbor stayed brown until summer.
And the stickiness.
Mm.
It got everywhere. Subway platforms, people's homes, everything sticky for months.
And that lingering smell, people said for decades after, on hot days you could still faintly smell molasses. Eerie.
So naturally there were lawsuits. A big one, actually.
A class action suit, yeah. 119 residents against U.S. Industrial Alcohol, Purity's parent company. One of the first in Massachusetts, apparently.
A real landmark case for corporate accountability.
Though USIA tried to blame anarchists first, didn't they? Claimed it was bombed.
Yeah, a desperate defense. But the court appointed an auditor. Took him 3 years.
And he found the company was responsible. Structural failure, plain and simple.
An MIT professor, Charles Spofford, did the key analysis. Found the steel plates were too thin, not enough rivets. Basic, fatal flaws.
Calculated the stress was way too high, almost double what it should have been. The safety factor was just not there.
So USIA had to pay up $628,000 in damages back then.
Which sounds like maybe not a lot now, but adjust for inflation. It's over $11 million today. Significant.
But the real legacy wasn't just the money. It was the changes to building codes.
Huge changes, not just in Massachusetts, but nationwide. Suddenly, engineers and architects had to file calculations, sign off on drawings.
It professionalized engineering, made safety regulations a standard thing, all because of this bizarre flood. It's a key takeaway, really.
And modern science has looked back at it too, hasn't it? Harvard studied the temperature effects. Engineers reanalyzed the steel.
Yeah, confirming things, like that batch of warmer molasses added just before, likely made the rescue harder because it cooled and thickened so fast after the rupture.
And confirming the steel was too thin and brittle because it lacked manganese. Plus, those flawed rivets Spofford spotted, it all lined up.
So if you go there today, to the north end, you won't see a giant tank.
Nope. It's Langone Park now. Ball field, playground, boss courts. Life goes on.
But there is a small plaque nearby in Popolo Park, a quiet reminder.
And they did a commemoration for the 100th anniversary in 2019. Use radar to find the old tank base. Read the victims' names.
Which is important because despite its impact on safety laws, it often gets treated like a weird footnote, right?
Yeah, more like a quirky anecdote than the serious tragedy it was. There's definitely talk about needing a better memorial.
And we shouldn't forget the context either. The North End was largely an immigrant community then. Less political power raises questions about protection for vulnerable groups.
Definitely adds another layer to it.
And it pops up in pop culture, which is kind of strange. Bands have written songs about it.
Yeah, the darkest of the hillside thickets, protest the hero. Even comedians mention it. It lingers in this odd way.
So wrapping this up, the big takeaway. This seemingly bizarre event, the Great Molasses Flood, wasn't just weird. It was a profound tragedy born from negligence.
Absolutely. A disregard for safety that had huge lasting consequences, shaping the regulations that protect us now.
And it's a stark reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
About the cost of cutting corners, prioritizing profit over people. We still see echoes of that, unfortunately.
We do. Maybe not with molasses, but the underlying issues.
Yeah. And that final eerie detail that some people still say they smell molasses there on hot summer days.
Like a ghost of the disaster. Chilling.
It makes you think, doesn't it? How these strange, almost unbelievable events can hold such deep lessons about responsibility, accountability, safety.
And maybe makes you wonder,